Welcome everyone to today's webinar sponsored by Travo. We are so excited about doing this special webinar for you. You know, it's interesting to me that I've been in the administrative industry for 47 years now, and it seems the one challenging area that is consistent for assistants and travelers alike is the travel planning. And so while we have talked about this in the past, I think a year ago we did something on this, there's never enough time to cover everything that is involved with travel planning. So anyways, welcome everyone as you come into the chat, say hello, let us know where you are. Love to hear from you and see where you are coming from. Tae Lee is the founder and CEO of Travo, which is a trip planning tool developed specifically for administrative professionals. I think that's really an important piece to know about Travo. Tae and I have been on a journey, and our teams, both of our teams, for about 2 years now, and it has been such a pleasure to work with Tae and his entire team. In fact, I wanted to take a moment to tell you what I love about Tae Lee and his team. First of all, they are very professional people. They have been incredible to work with. They're efficient, they're timely. One of the things, though, that I probably love most is they really care. Just like I truly care about the administrative profession, and I eat, breathe, and live the administrative industry, they care about your needs, your concerns when it comes to travel planning and helping reduce your stress. And they eat, breathe, and live it as well. Some of the other things that I love is that they're able to provide perspectives from both sides of the desk. So today, Tae is going to talk to you from someone who was an executive and traveled, did a lot of traveling, so he has that experience as a traveler. But also now they've been on the other side of the desk talking to thousands probably of assistants about their needs, their concerns. What do they need advice on? And so they also shared that perspective, which is so important and critical. So I don't want to take up too much more of your time because I know Tae has an awesome program for you. But let me just quickly tell you about our goals for today and a few logistics. Our goals for today are to cover some general trip planning tips for you, but especially focus on some advanced tips and strategies, and also deal with some of those more challenging situations. I saw what Tae is going to talk about today, and I liked how he's going to address crisis issues, which we don't touch on usually often. How do you deal with that when there's a crisis? So we're going to do that, and you're going to see travel planning through the eyes of experts and thought leaders in the industry. We'd also like this to be an interactive session. This is about you, and we want to leave adequate time to answer your questions. So we're going to talk for about 40 minutes, and then we plan to leave 20 minutes to address your questions. You can enter your questions anytime during the webinar in the chat, and there's a little question icon that you can select. This way your question will stand out, and we'll be sure to address it, or hopefully address it through this program. It depends on how many questions we receive. What else would I like to tell you? There's going to be bonus sessions with Travo. So if you're really interested in learning more about the tool itself, Travo is offering a 2-part series follow-up, free webinars for you. And you'll learn more about that later, and we'll also let you know in the email that you'll get with the replay link how to sign up for the bonus webinars. So without further ado, I can't wait to have Tae Lee, my good friend, take over this program, Tae, and teach us a lot of great things.
Thank you so much, Joan. I really, really appreciate it. You know, it's a pleasure to do this webinar for everyone because of my story of starting Travo is exactly for this reason, to help administrative professionals gain better recognition, improve performance through technology and tools. Before we get started, I want to kind of tell you a little bit of a story around my inspiration for doing this. About 3 years ago, I was a COO of a fairly large startup, about 300 some odd people. And one day I thought to shadow my admin as she was planning and booking a trip to New York City. And wow, I realized that trip planning and booking for others is extremely different than doing it for yourself. When you do it for yourself, you kind of know how to get around. You know that your family's nearby, or you could just call up a friend. When you're planning travel for somebody else, there's an element of trust. There's an element of from an executive standpoint, did my admin look at all these different things that could potentially happen, right? Did my admin get all my preferences? And I spent, even for me, when I got these itineraries, I spent a lot of time just checking, right? And look, I trust my admin more than anything, but I know that everybody can make mistakes. And even presenting the trip in a certain way, I feel like made a difference in terms of me having to review versus just saying, hey, this looks good, let's go ahead and book it. So I saw this huge difference between booking for yourself and booking for others. And the other thing is that as admins, there aren't that many tools specifically tailored to the admin community. Yet you guys are the second largest employment group in the entire United States. When it comes to travel, you guys are the key decision makers, right? So today, I want to talk about several things. As Joan said, the goals are very clear. We're not going to talk about Travo, as a tool. We'll do that a little bit later, maybe in the two-part series, next week. But I really want to focus today on making sure that you guys take away something valuable, something that's actionable, and something that's really going to help you guys, gain a different perspective, right? And I'm also going to, I'm not going to really cover the basics that much. I mean, I think, pretty much you guys are part of Office Dynamics. You guys read up on a lot of these things. So I really want to make sure that people take away something brand new, right? Brian had sent this morning a handout of all the things that we're going to talk about today. So I hope that you guys printed those things out. I'm going to refer to them on this webinar as well. But please follow along, and I'm going to go through all this stuff again. If you have any questions, click the question button, and we're going to try to get to those answers towards the end of the presentation. So the first handout the first page of the handout are the goals for today, and I kind of want to share with you guys the survey results. I do this for a lot of presentations because, again, I just want this to be for you guys. I'm not really trying to sell Travo or make you guys talk about the tool or anything today. And the things that came out from this survey is, let's see, 34% of you guys said expect the unexpected, how to handle emergency situations, last minute changes. So we're going to dive into that very deeply. The second highest rank is how to plan a trip from start to finish. Third, your traveler's expectation and what makes bookings great. And lastly, how to save money and maximize comfort for your budget. So those are the things that we're going to talk about today. And also, I'm going to take some questions at the end as well. So the first slide of the handout, which I'm going to share with you guys, just so that you know exactly which one I'm talking about, is this one right here. It's the good and great slide, right? So we have several things in the good column and also in the great column. And I kind of want to take this opportunity to make sure that, from an executive standpoint, here are the things that I feel like a good admin will do, right? And here are the things that will make me think like, wow, this is pretty amazing. In fact, I think I'm going to start trusting my admin more than I trust myself because, he or she is thinking about this all the time, right? Like as he or she's building the trip for me, right? So let me just turn off the screen share. So a couple of things on the good column, as you can see, right? And I divided this up between pre-trip, in-trip, and post-trip. So in pre-trip, we have gathers travelers information for the trip, right? And then the great for that would be saves travelers information for future trips, right? So if you think about that, it's like anything that's going to happen in the future, that's the potentially happen in the future. That's the feeling that you want your traveler to get. Plans around the traveler, where the traveler is going to be, plans around where the traveler might also be, right? Is how do you turn that into being great? Notifies traveler of upcoming trip. I'm sure you guys do this. Hey, you have a trip coming up. Notifies hotels of the upcoming trip and make sure that his or her preferences are being taken into consideration, right? I've heard horror stories about how travelers get to their hotel and they give the room to somebody else. You could avoid that by calling the hotel on the morning of and saying, hey, my traveler is going to arrive a little bit late. He or she still wants a king bed or whatever, and make sure that they have those things set. Books best flights, car, hotel choices, and then how to turn that into great is best flight hotel choices while communicating why his or her preferences didn't match, right? And this is the other thing too. When my admin gave me, hey, here are the flights, here are the hotels, here are these things, I just kind of went to Kayak or something to see, okay, is there something better, right? Is there what happened to the W, because I know it's around there, right? How to make that great is, if my admin said, I did look into your preferences, the W is out of budget or is 50% more or whatever it is. That's why I put you in this, right? More explanation around that of what you think the traveler would choose would turn that into a great great action, right? In trip, right? So communicating delays, changes to a flight, those are things that are considered good. How to turn that into great, communicating delays, changes with other options, right? So you could say, hey, there's a delay on this flight or there's a change, but here's a different flight that you could take. You could call the airline and do these things, right? So again, the whole theme of it is thinking about the future. Ensures calendar is up to date. How to turn that into great is confirms a calendar with the people that they're supposed to meet with, right? Just making sure that they hold the time, and it does several things, right? It makes your executive seem more professional, I believe, to the person that they're having the meeting with. If his or her admin is reaching out and saying, hey, Susie is going to be at your office at 10 a.m. just making sure, right, that you guys are confirming, right, these kind of things. Post trip, I put none there because I just don't think a lot of people think about post trip at all. They just do pretty much nothing, right? But how to turn that into great is to follow up with your traveler and get the feedback for their trip. Change what you book in the future. Let that change what you book in the future, based on that feedback. And I think, anytime you could eliminate the back and forth between you and your traveler is great, right? Okay, so now in the spirit of covering these things outside the norm, I'd like to quickly just kind of go to the next slide here and talk about the traveler preferences checklist, right? So the very first thing you want to do, right, in terms of getting everything set, right, especially if you're dealing with a new traveler, is to make sure you have their checklist or their preferences. So the slide that I'm talking about with this one is this slide right here, travel preferences checklist. So I put down a couple of lines so you guys could take notes if you need to. And I also highlighted the things that I'm going to talk a little bit more at length, because a lot of these things like name, date of birth, email address, you guys kind of get all that. So on the general information side, make sure you take all this down, right? Make sure you store it somewhere, right? Travel actually puts all this stuff together, but even if you don't use it, put it in a Google Doc, put it in Word doc, put it somewhere so that you don't have to go back and forth with your traveler. Something that I want to talk about: preferred payment method. So this is highlighted because there are times when your traveler is going to have a personal section, right? Personal section of the trip, personal leg of the trip versus a professional leg of the trip. And you want to make sure that they're in the right credit cards for accounting and all that stuff. It's just thinking about, being proactive about what people usually do. Airline preferences. So, you obviously have the preferred airlines, but a lot of people don't talk about excluded airlines. I know that, later on I'm going to cover this. We have, baggage fees. We have, cancellation fees. We have all these different things, and every airline works very, very differently. Some airlines, like, I hope nobody from Spirit Airlines is on this call, but Spirit Airlines have a tendency to get delayed a lot of times, or maybe their seats aren't as comfortable, right? Because they're considered like the ultra budget airline, right? Your traveler might say, I don't want to fly Spirit, right? Or I don't want to fly a certain airline, right? So make sure you get those preferences as well. TSA pre-check is known traveler number is another thing I want to talk about. Now, there's a deeper point to this and how to get this the TSA number from connecting with your ticket. It's actually a pretty complicated thing because it's run by the government. The name has to, including the middle name, has to be exactly the same. Even with your frequent traveler name that you put on there, it has to be exactly the same. Any little thing that doesn't match, you're not going to get that TSA pre-check stamp, right? So just making sure that all those names and the details and everything line up is really, really important for TSA pre-check. And hotel preferences, preferred chains. I highlighted that because I don't know how many of you guys know this, but there's only about 8 to 10 major hotel chains for 90% of the hotels out there, right? So when you think about the W Hotel, it's part of Starwood, right? And there's a ton of other hotels that you just think, oh, they're separate chain. No, they're all part of one, right? So if your traveler has like loyalty points, for example, for Starwood, right, you should know that they could stay at the W, they could stay at a bunch of other hotels under the brand, right? Ground preferences. Preferred transportation method is, I'm going to talk a little bit about that later on, but there's so many different types of transportation options these days, and I'm going to dive into kind of what are the positives and the negatives of each. And lastly, pickup location. So when you rent a car, there is a big difference between shuttling to the place, right? And sometimes a shuttle is provided by at the airport. They do the pickup at the airport. Some places, believe it or not, they don't do that pickup. Some places have it so that you directly pick it up at the airport. So you just want to make sure that you communicate those things to your traveler for rental cars, instead of just saying, hey, you have a rental car with Hertz. You want to be able to say, hey, you have a rental car with Hertz with a shuttle pickup, go follow the purple sign, right? And then they'll pick you up. Okay. So let's see. All right. And the next thing I want to talk about. So now you've kind of put together all the checklists. A document that houses all the information, all the preferences, right? The next thing I want to talk about is now the trip planning and booking portion of this. So that's the next slide. Let me just do a quick screen share. It's this one right here. Same thing. I just highlighted a couple of the yellow points because I want to dive into it. a little bit more. So let's start with the meetings, right? So first of all, the meetings are very important, right? It's usually what you plan your entire trip around, right? Some of the things that people forget to do is think about pending meetings versus confirmed meetings, right? Um, and by the way, I know that confirmed meetings can quickly turn into um, pending meetings and canceled meetings, but it's all around the event itself, right? So make sure you keep that in mind. Do a screen share. Turn off the screen share here. And then, also look up the time zone differences. Now, time zones can really have an adverse effect on how you plan your trip, right? I've seen so many times where people forget to change the time zone, and especially with meetings, and when you're flying into places, is it the arrival time of the EST? And I'm sure you guys use calendars as well, Outlook calendars or Google calendars, and you just have to double check and make sure that it's always part. It should be always part of the checklist. Let's put it that way. So now you're kind of thinking about flights, hotels, ground transportation. First thing that's a priority is flights. Always flights. And the reason is because these are the most, highest in demand, least flexible, right? The first to be sold out kind of things. Now, on the downside, they also have the most strict cancellation policies, right? Which we'll get into a little bit later. I know a lot of questions from the survey were about cancellations and how you can avoid those fees. But flights is always the top priority, right? And you got to be able to look at the schedule, figure out the filters, right? And later on, next week when we do a deeper dive, I'll show you how you can use some of those tools, right, that are online, to get the exact time, or the places, or get the flights that is compatible with your events. If there are pending meetings, check for refundable fares. For flexibility, again, this has stuff to do with cancellation, which I'm going to touch later on. Hotels is a second priority, right? Because location of where your traveler needs to be and where the hotel is extremely important. The good thing about hotels is that usually they have a very, very lax policy. I really don't recommend anybody doing a non-refundable for a hotel. Why? Because you just don't need to, right? There's so many, like the price difference is not the same as a flight. You look at a flight that's refundable versus non-refundable, it's literally over 2x, right? $200 for non-refundable, $400, $500 for refundable. Hotels, you're talking about $200 for refundable, $220 for $200 for non-refundable, $220 for refundable, right? So those are the things that are a little bit. It's just not worth it, right? So the first thing you should do after the flights is just get a hotel. You cancel it later on. It's very, very easy to do that, and your traveler will thank you for it. Ground. So this is the third priority, and it's only a third priority because there's so many different options, so many different ways, right? If your traveler just says, "Hey, I'm just gonna take the Uber, whatever," it's totally fine, right? Like you should just, you don't really have to worry about it that much, right? The part that you do have to worry about, however, with the ground transportation is that every single type of ground transportation, you should factor in a different travel time, right? So if your traveler is picking up a rental car, it's going to take them 30-40 minutes in line to get the rental car, right? If you're doing like subway, for example, you don't really have to worry about traffic. If you're above the ground, you have to worry a lot about traffic. So these are the things that I'm going to talk about in the next slide here, which is the different types of ground transportation. And let me see. And this is the ground transportation types, right? So like I said, nowadays there's so many different types of grant transportation. Yeah, you could do a ride share, which is Uber, Lyft. Van pools, believe it or not, is still around, right? Some people for business still take the super shuttle. A black car, rentals, taxi, and public transit. And each of these have a key benefit and a side effect. So for rideshare, it's all about convenience, right? You can pick up your phone, you could get the car. The side effect of this is risk, and some people don't know this, but insurance as well, right? Risk because you're literally letting somebody who hasn't, I guess, gone through the formal training of driving other people, right? Anybody with a license and a computer can sign up for Uber or Lyft, right? Insurance policies are really lax, right? I know that, taxis have, minimum $1 million insurance policy, right? So these are the things that might matter to your traveler. Van pools, very inexpensive, as you know, like a super shuttle. I think like you could take one for $12. The problem with that is the travel time, right? Like you're going to be going for for six like different places before you get to the final destination, which kind of which sucks. um, Black car, very, very comfortable, right? Cost is extremely high with that. But, I think for a lot of business travelers, it is about comfort. You could also get black car, by the way, with Uber, which does allow, those cars, by the way, on Uber, they do have to register for what's called a TCP license, and that does require higher limits on insurance and things like that, a little bit more safer and more comfortable. Rentals, maximum flexibility, right? If you have family in town, or if your traveler has family in town, or a lot of pending meetings, that might be the way to go. Downside, pickup time. I've spent 30, 40 minutes before in picking up my rental cars. And by the way, the rental cars, you kind of get what you pay for, right? So if you go to like a kayak, you'll know that certain car brands, such as like Hertz, are usually more expensive. And then if you want to go like Fox rental car, it's usually the cheapest. I will tell you from my travels, um, they're all priced in, right? And what I mean by that is if you go with Fox rental car, so is everybody else, right? The budget conscious people, and you're going to be spending 30, 40 minutes on in the line, right? Stuck there. Taxi, professional, or as depending on city really these days, but they tend to be more professional. But reliability is not the greatest, right? I mean, I've called so many taxi companies and they're like, hey, we'll be there in 20 minutes, we'll be in 30 minutes. And that's where Uber is frankly, beating the taxis, right? You can just pick up a phone, you see all the cars around, within 5 minutes you get a car. Um, Public transit is the cheapest by far, but it's also the least comfortable. So those are the different kind of transportation types. Now, the part that I do want to spend the rest of the time here on is expecting the unexpected, right? A lot of people had questions around like, how do I get in front of things that I know might happen, right? So pre-trip changes, right? And these changes I think are all kind of in the realm of unexpected or expected if you've been doing this long enough. Here, let me hang on one second. Let me just turn the screen share off. All right. So the pre-trip changes, cancellation fees. So let's talk a little bit about cancellation fees. Flights, as you all know, right? Flights are extremely expensive, right? For cancellations, $200, $250. A lot of times it's just not even worth canceling because the cost of the cancellation to rebook something is like higher than the ticket price itself, right? So there aren't really ways to get around this, right? But one thing that you can do is kind of start jotting down how many times uh, how many times you actually have to make a change to a flight. I know from an industry standpoint, it's about like I said, the refundable fares are about 2x the price. So if you kind of use that as a baseline and say, my traveler, he or she um, cancels his or her flight more than 50% of the time, then I think it's better to go with a refundable fare. So that's kind of how you could do it. But also just knowing the cancellation fees offhand, there's a lot of resources online. I'll share with you guys some of those things in our next webinar, where they detail out all the different airlines and what their cancellation fees are like. So hopefully that will help. Flights, hotels, rentals, in terms of cancellations, I covered this a little bit, but hotels very, very easy. Rentals, I probably shouldn't be saying this, but rentals, even if you don't show up, a lot of rental companies don't charge your credit card, right? So it's like it's the least flexible to the most flexible, I guess, in terms of making those changes. And again, like just making sure that you capture how often changes occur during a trip or pre-trip. In-trip, providing alternative plans by price and comfort. So a lot of times your traveler is going to be on the road, and he or she might say, "Hey, my last meeting got canceled, right? It'll be great if I could fly out earlier, right? Very, very quickly, I think there's a lot of great online resources, and I'll share with some of you guys the tools, even beyond travel, right? There's a lot of great tools out there for this, where you can see what other options there are very, very quickly. In-trip changes as well, right? You gotta just think about how many times it occurs. And hotels, for example, a lot of times, right? Like it's very easy to extend a hotel one night. All you got to do is call up the hotel. Most of the hotels will happily do that for you at the same rate. Rental cars, you don't really have to go back, right? Now, if you don't call, right? If you don't call Hertz and tell them, they're going to charge you a late fee, which usually is multiple times more expensive, right? So when you do have those changes come up, you have to call the car rental places and extend those things. And usually when you extend them, they'll be able to do it with the same rate. Now, weather issues. I threw a little bit of a graphic up there to show you how often this happens. 69% of delays happen due to weather, versus all these, equipment, runway, volume, too many flights going out and stuff like that. So, I think it'll be great if everybody gets a live weather app where you can literally put in the places that your traveler will be, and it will give you notifications if there's a storm coming in or if it's going to be foggy. Be aware of the connecting flights as well, right? This is another mistake that a lot of people make, is how much time should I put in for the changes, right? And some people some people say, oh, 45 minutes is enough, right? That's enough for me to get from one gate to another. If planes work like clockwork, that probably is enough. However, as you guys know, they usually don't, right? On our site in travel, and I think on a lot of other sites, they do have percentages of delays whenever it's available. So make sure you look at that, because, for example, if a flight is delayed 30% of the time, and or delayed or is on time to only 70% of the time, and then the next flight is only on time 70% of the time, and you have to make those connecting. Chances of your traveler actually making that both of those flights is starting to become like only 60% or 50%, right? So you just have to kind of be aware of that. And the last thing is just know your airports, right? So, a lot of times, like I used to fly up to San Francisco all the time, and I know that they have just fog rolling in all the time, right? So just knowing that certain airports are just going to have really unexpected delays based on weather. As a connecting flight, that's not someplace that you want to be. And look, these are the things that, unfortunately, I wish there was a better way for uh, admins to get recognition, right? Um, because it is kind of like what those great admins think about, right? But it's very tough to communicate to your boss. Hey, I didn't put you through San Francisco because the fog rolls in every now and then, right? But these are the things that I think will make sure that your traveler will have a smooth trip. Crisis issues. Look, there's there was a even today, right? There was some shooting at some congressman's baseball game, right? There's so many things happening around the world, the things that are happening in London, a lot of, potential terrorism. So these are unfortunately becoming more and more of a real scenario. But, all these things can happen due to like a gigantic hurricane and hurricane season, by the way, I heard is going to be much worse this year than last year as well. So I just kind of wanted to touch on this briefly because I don't think it's something that a lot of people talk about. So the first thing is, when these things happen, whatever happens, get in touch with your traveler with a evacuation route if it's applicable, right? If that person is in a city where, let's say certain big things are going to go down, like how do you get them out, right? If it's not a flight, how do you get them on a car? How do you give these people options? The second thing is always know who that person wants to be notified, right? It's great if you could call that person's family, wife, kids or whatever, right? And tell them that their traveler is okay. You also, a lot of people travel to satellite offices, right? Just making sure that you know the resources on location, right? People who can help them out, or get in touch with, right? People who know the area. These are the things that your traveler will want to know. And the last thing is, I can't stress this enough. It's just you got to get them out ASAP. Flights, everything, all those prices are only going to go up in crisis situations. You're going to see those things jump, but I guarantee you it's kind of like first come, first serve, right? The people who get there the fastest are going to be the ones that, are going to be on that next plane, right? Or next rental or whatever it is. So just keep those things in mind. It's not, at that point, it's not so much like, oh, there's this option and this option. It's just like, no, like, put that person on the option. Oh, by the way, with the flights, I know that through corporate booking tools like Travo, there's a 24-hour full refund policy, right? So if you make a booking within first 24 hours, even if the flight's occurring in, 2 or 3 days, we do full refunds. I know that certain airlines, even when you go through the airlines, if it's 7 days before, the 24-hour rule no longer applies. But I think this is part of the reason why the corporate travel management tools out there do a good job of is you shouldn't think about the price because you can just book it and then a couple hours later, if they decide not to do it, you could always just cancel it and get a full refund. So that's kind of that's kind of it in terms of expecting unexpected. It's 10:38 right now. So we're kind of running out of time because I do want to get to the Q&As. But the next slide, I'm going to do this real quick because these are the questions from the surveys. So the first question Rosalinda had is, how do you anticipate or prepare for visa requirements for different nationalities? So this is a question that was frequently asked, but it can be easily solved. I've done a lot of research in terms of what resources are out there. If you guys actually go to cibtvisas.com, you will be able to put in the I hold a passport from X country, I'm traveling to this, and then run that search. It's a great website. It tells you all you need to know about the visas. So I highly recommend everyone use that for visa requirements when your traveler is traveling internationally. Number two, how do you pick a flight for someone when there are sometimes hundreds of possibilities? So this has more to do with kind of the starting point that we talked about, the checklist, right? The preferences checklist. If you think that there's hundreds of options, I think, you have to get to know your traveler a little bit better in terms of what he or she prefers. Because you don't want to go to anybody and say, hey, there's 100 options. You want to go and say, hey, there's 3 or 4 different options, right? Depending on if you want to fly out early or later, or if budget's an issue, it's not an issue. These are some of the things that we also worked on the travel app, which we'll dive into next week. But there are ways to give a smaller list of really well vetted recommendations. 3, how do you compromise travel when the executive wishes to travel to a particular site against company policy, which requires you a prescribed corporate travel agency? So this is less about travel, probably more about just operational. It's more of an operational question in terms of how you should work with your executive. The first question I would ask is, who is your direct manager, right? Do you have a centralized travel agency, right, within the company? Because if you do, your direct manager is probably not the traveler, right? And if these issues come up, you should talk to your direct manager. However, if the traveler is your direct manager, I think first and foremost, your only job is to tell them, hey, this is out of policy. Do you still want to proceed, right? I don't think it's really, you can't really do more than that, right? And these are some of the things that you just kind of take the stresses out of your job, right? These are the only things that you could control, right? You're there to give information, you're there to give advice, right? Ultimately, if the person that you report to wants to do these things, then it's up to them. But it's your job to just let them know the consequences of it, or or that it's out of policy. When is the best time to book flights for the best deal? 2 months, 2 weeks, 9 months? It really depends. I've been to like Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas, which I think has over 100,000 attendees, and then those things, the cheapest hotels and flights have been, as soon as you're going to go, right? 9 months in advance, it's good. The prices just continue to go up, right? However, for meetings and other things, I wouldn't say there's a specific hard and fast rule, because I've seen prices go up and down. Generally, you want to stay outside of 2 weeks. And the reason why I say that is the airlines and how they work is there are different economy fares, right? Believe it or not. So when we think about just different kind of fare, we think about economy, premium economy, business, first class, right? Second class, right? These kind of things. But a lot of people don't know that within economy, there's still like 7 or 8 different flight classes. And they do this for pricing reasons, right? And all of them are different. And one of the things that almost nearly every airline has is 2 weeks in advance purchase. That is coded as a different fare. And usually it is the cheaper fares, right? So, before 2 weeks is great. Number 5, I have noticed that now when you book an airline airfare ticket, you have to add a lot of dollars for a piece of luggage, which makes quite a difference with the original ticket. Is there a way to have everything included and not to do online shopping to add those extras? So I like this question because it's something that we're solving right now at Travo. And every single month that goes by, it seems to get more complicated, because Delta last year came out what they called with a basic economy fare, which doesn't allow changes, doesn't give you bags, right? American also American and United this year just recently came out with basic economy as well, and some of them, believe it or not, don't let you use the overhead bins, right? Which I just wonder how they're going to police that, but that's what it says. You can't use overhead bins when you buy these kind of fares. So they're really trying to nickel and dime. And I guess for us, the way that we solve it is we have a filter there that says, hey, take all the basic economy stuff out, right? Beyond that, there are airlines that just choose to kind of nickel and dime all the way through, right? Spirit being one of them, Allegiant, Frontier, right? Some of these other airlines, they do. If you go through their checkout process, it's like, okay, H bag is $25, seat choices is 20, right? Thankfully, a lot of the regular fares from United, Delta, the major ones, don't tend to do those things that much. Although most of those do charge checked-in baggage, but that's the way that you should just need to you should be able to handle those, right? And we're trying to make that easier, at least from at Travo. So I think that's all the Q&A. Oh, the 2 additional webinars. So you guys, everybody's probably wondering what 2 webinars or what we're going to talk about. I kind of divided this up between like the stuff that we could do pre-trip. We're going to talk a little bit about how to get very, very quickly find a flight that is compatible with your traveler schedules. How to choose hotels based on distance and map and all that stuff. How to keep everybody's profile, or what are the things and how to keep that stuff. The second part, the in-trip and post-trip management, which happens on June the 22nd. The links are there, by the way, and I think Brian's going to send out links after the webinar as well. But we're going to dive into the itinerary building for the traveler. How to make cancellations, and kind of use even other technology and tools that are out there, beyond Travo. So those are what the 2 additional webinars are going to be about. I know that some of you guys have signed up. I think it's going to be great to have all of you guys participate in those things as well. So that's it for my portion, and I kind of want to open it up for Q&A right now.
And Tay, right before we do that, I just wanted to ask, because it's almost 10 to 11, do you mind if we go an extra 5 minutes?
Yeah.
So,
I could.
I don't have a problem, and if any of our attendees can stay with us an extra 5 minutes, we'll invite them to do so we can get to some of those great questions they have.
Yeah, absolutely. I love doing this, so
okay.
As long as we need, yeah.
All right, go ahead. Malia, I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, Tay. How are you?
Good.
Good. So I have a few questions. First off, I have quite a few people asking for templates. Does Travo offer templates?
Yes.
They're looking for examples on easy to read itineraries and things of that sort.
Mm-hmm. We not only have templates, and this is good. We'll send templates, let's say, after the call, because we actually have a entire Google survey doc that we send to organizations where their travelers fill out, the personal information, everything from loyalty numbers and everything, and it gets funneled back. I think if we share that survey, it's something that everybody here can just utilize and send it to their entire company. And and I'll send that out next week when we do this in the pre-trip section. I'll tell you guys how to use that template, so that it's not just like, hey, here's a sheet of paper. It's an interactive tool. Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Ethel is asking, when a CEO is looking for the best administrative to hire, what do you recommend that administrative assistant put on their on their resume to highlight their credentials for handling travel?
Yeah, I think, statistics, right? Executives love statistics. If you could tell me, hey, I plan travel for 30 people over, 100 trips a year, right? Totaling, $2 million in spend. That to me is pretty impressive, right? That to me says, okay, the company has entrusted this person previously with $2 million in travel spend. And believe it or not, it happens. And all these people, he or she has such great experience, because look, the one thing about travel that everybody knows is that when everything goes smoothly, there's a reason for that, right? There's a reason for that. And if your admin is doing the trip planning, he or she is the reason, right? So just having somebody say that they're experienced in this, in terms of professional business travel, I think it's highly, highly valuable. So use a lot of statistics, big numbers, just showing that experience. And maybe if travel is a big part of what they need you to do, during the interviews, be prepared to answer the question of, tell me about a time where the unexpected things happen. What did you do, right? And be able to share unique experiences, right? Because if you have a unique experience, like to say, hey, there one time there were 5 delays and my traveler needed to get to 3 different cities. They know that, okay, if he or she figured that out, all the stuff that's less than that, he or she probably had experience with, right? So come up with a great anecdote story that that other candidates might not have, right, to stand out.
That's awesome. Okay, are there specific discounts for different companies?
Yeah. So one thing that I'm going to try to do my best to answer this because it's a little bit complicated. So there are corporate discounts, right? So Travo, some companies that Concur works with, Amex for Amex Business, Carlson Wagonlit. I know that 60% or 70% of the people here use other travel agencies. Those agencies tend to have corporate rates, right? Now, one thing to know about corporate rates, sometimes it's not always the cheapest, right? Sometimes you actually get better rates through your AAA or whatever, right? So there are those kind of rates, right? And then those are same with us, right? When you go to our site, we actually have the most extensive list of rates because we put in AAA rates, we put in AARP rates, some of these things that we know that maybe not all the people will be able to qualify for, but we just put it there because it just kind of gives people a sense of what's out there, right? So there are those kind of discount rates. The second type of discount rates is company specific, right? So a lot of airlines require you to do, I know that major airlines like United, you need to do over $1 million of flight spend in order for you to start getting your company's I guess, discounted rates, right, for that particular airline. So there's company specific ones, but those spends needs to be extremely, extremely high. And they're negotiated at the company level, which means somebody from your side, your company needs to call the airline and ask them, if they qualify. Now, something that's easier than that to get is a corporate loyalty program. And I encourage everybody to just kind of go online and look at the different airlines loyalty programs. And just tell you what they do is they don't really give you points; they give you benefits, right? So I know that United, their business corporate plan, allows people to check first bag in for free. Yeah, it's stuff like that, right? Our tool Travo actually allows people to put in those numbers, and so that you could basically get those same benefits as well, right? So there's kind of 3 different ways that people get discounts.
Wonderful. Let's see. Sorry about that. Grace is asking, is there a way to get SkyMiles applied to a single account when booking for multiple people?
No, unfortunately, the miles are specific to that person. So much so, and there's a lot of regulation behind it, right, from the government level. This is the same reason why, like, if you cancel a flight, right, and you get a credit, it's only for that same specific person, right? Even though you might have purchased it with a company card or whatever, it really doesn't matter. It's for the same exact person. So they're usually very, very strict on that. However, the reverse of it is with points, right? You could obviously purchase for other people. So that direction works. The opposite direction, the other side of it doesn't work.
Okay. Connie would like to know if you know of any travel discounts for nonprofits.
There are probably some more lax situations where they do give discount. I know that we had a client that worked for a nonprofit and they booked earlier, right? Like this is like 5-10 years ago, they used to get these discounts. I know a lot of airlines had stopped doing specific discounts for that, but I can't tell you like exactly which airlines. But from just what I know, most of those are either have gone away or are going away.
Okay. Ruth would like to know if travel provides a any spend analysis tools.
Yeah, so on Travo, once you make the booking, and we'll cover this. I don't want to talk about Travo too much, but when you make bookings, there's a whole My Trip section, and you can actually download the CSV of all the trips that people have taken, the amount of money that people spent. So we kind of thought about like either doing that, or like making some graphical, cool looking thing. But based on the research that we had with admins, they just want to download an Excel file and mess with the numbers and kind of look at the dates and be able to do those things their way. So we're going to have that within the tool.
Okay. Debbie would like to know, is there a best time of day to look for and book the cheapest flight reservations, and are some days better than other days?
Not specifically. I mean, it's not so much about days and time as it about over a week long period, right, or 2 week long period. I'm gonna write a note here because I'll show you guys some tools that you could use that kind of tell you in a graph when the best time to book is. And it's flight specific. It's location specific because every single city behaves differently, right? And that has to do with just knowing that, like, okay, that there's more direct flights from LAX to San Francisco than there are from LAX to, let's say, Bermuda or whatever, right? And these kind of things have a tendency to impact pricing and when the prices go up.
Okay. Let's see. I know you mentioned you didn't want to talk a whole lot about Travo specifically, but Sandra's asking how does Travo refer from the other online travel systems and companies?
Yeah, so the good thing about Travo is that behind Travo, we're working with one of the largest corporate travel agencies in the entire world. They've been around for about 40 years. They process more than $250 million worth of bookings, right? So when you make a booking through us, we are utilizing some of the largest corporate travel agencies and different rates. For example, you guys could research this, but we include rates from BCD, right, which is, I think, the largest corporate travel corporate rate providers. The government recently did a $10 billion, $20 billion deal with them. Look it up, BCD Travel. That's part of it. So we have a lot of different partners that we work with to get people the best price, and also the fulfillment side of when the tickets are actually being purchased. That's handled by a very, very large team and a large company that makes sure that everything is done in the most professional way possible.
Oh, great. Okay, and Alicia is asking, well, she's stating her company is tax exempt, and is this a feature that travel can incorporate in the future?
Yeah, we're looking into that right now. Actually, several people have asked how we can handle that. So I don't have an answer for Alicia at this point, but we are looking into it.
Okay. Susie is asking, Tay, could you please include cities, airports in Canada to your report and your documents too?
You mean so I guess question would be as a user from Canada, or being able to fly there to Canada, because if it's to travel to Canada, it should already be there. As a user from Canada, one of the things that we have to if we're going to open up to Canada is to get Canadian currency, right? Which is a little bit more difficult. So right now, just so you guys know, when you book on Travo, everything is going to be in US dollars.
Okay. And Cassandra would like to know, how can the admin get points for making travel arrangements for a group of people for a meeting?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I mean, for us, we are looking at a program to have admins also get rewards on top of the traveler getting rewards, right? But while we're on the subject of rewards, this is something that a lot of people don't know. So when you book on, like, let's say hotels.com, there's no way for your traveler to actually get hotel reward points. Uh, that's why the hotels.com give you that, points, those points. So, the way that, and then the reason why that happens is because when you're transacting on hotels.com, you'll notice that on the credit card, it says hotels.com. On Travo, when you book stuff through us, your traveler is able to get all their points because, again, you look at the credit card, it's going to say, Hilton, right? As a company that charges it, it goes directly to them. Now, in addition to that, to make the offering better for admins, we are looking into ways to how to reward not just the travelers, right, through their whole hotel points, but how do we do it for the admin who took all this time to put all these trips together, especially if they're doing it for 5-10 people, and they're spending $10,000, $20,000 on this trip. Absolutely, I feel like admins should get something for it. So we're looking into that.
Okay. Karen would like to, she's saying that she's from Canada and she mainly books flights within Canada. It looks like she won't be able to use travel. Is that correct?
Yeah. So one thing to make clear, and I hope I mentioned this, I wish I mentioned this earlier. Even if you use a corporate travel agency, you can still use Travo. We have a button there that says I already booked the trip through some other tool, and you could just fill in the data, right? You could just fill in the flight information and all that stuff. So the planning and everything, it doesn't really matter where you book. You could book it on hotels.com, you could book it on Concur or whatever, and you could put it all in there, right? The In terms of actually making a booking, you can book. It's just going to be in US dollars, right? Which is tricky for a lot of people. So we are looking into Canada. We are looking into the UK to in the future to expand in those markets. But right now, everything's just going to be in US dollars. Doesn't mean that those other people can't use our tool, can't book through us, but it will be charged in US dollars, unfortunately.
Okay. Alicia would like to know, how do you keep track of 300 people traveling and reimbursements?
Mm-hmm.
Do you use spreadsheet, calendar, hard copy?
Well, I'll tell you what, if you have 300 people traveling that need reimbursements, you are probably set up with some sort of an expense reporting tool. We partnered with one of the largest expense management companies called Expensify.com. And we make this process really, really simple, right? Simply, if people turn on Expensify, anything that they book go directly to their expense reporting account for reimbursements, and the traveler can detail what part of the expenses are reimbursable and what's not, right? So that's done through a partnership. We're announcing that it's live right now on the site. We're announcing that partnership within the next month. Now, we're also looking to partner potentially with Concur. And basically, what that means is that, if anybody that books with us, right, they'll be able to transport everything over to Concur for expense management and stuff like that. So, for 300 people, if you guys don't have an expense management, I would, I think it would be highly impressive if the admin comes to you and says, hey, look, there's so many people in your company that are traveling, right? Let's look at some of these expense management tools, right? Because it's way overdue.
Okay, and one last question. Lisa's asking if Travo can be used personally.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We developed this specific for administrative professionals. Our partners, our corporate rate partners, know exactly who this group of people are. And just like us, they're very excited to bring everybody these rates, right? So even if it's personal mixed in with business or just personal by itself, highly encourage you guys to sign up and check it out. And, again, next week we'll talk a little bit more about it, as well as answer some more specific detail questions.
Great.
All right.
Thank you, Tay.
All right. Woo! What a session. It's been fun for me to be able to watch the chat, because usually I'm too focused on the webinar presenting. And lots of wonderful information, great comments. It appears that all our attendees got a lot out of what you had to offer, as well as what they were exchanging with each other. So I think it was a very valuable use of people's time today. And so I want to thank you very, very much, Tay. And we will be sending the replay link with information about the bonus sessions, correct? And
yes.
I just want to thank everyone who participated today. We really, really appreciate it, and hope this has helped you tremendously, because we know how difficult your job is, and yet how critical and important it is. So Tay, any final sign-off words?
No, I mean, look, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. I know that we're building a travel management tool for administrative professionals, but beyond that, I really, really do care about everybody's development, and kind of making sure that admins get the recognition that you guys frankly deserve, right? Because the work is extremely hard, and people don't thank you or tell you, how you're doing until something goes wrong. It's that kind of job. And I'll tell you, like, me and Susan and the rest of the team here, as kind of like something that we didn't expect, is how much enjoyment we get out of talking with all these admins and building tools for this group of people who are extremely bright, want to try out new things and really better the professional workplace. So I really appreciate it. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here talking to you guys. And hopefully I'll see a lot of you guys next week as well.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Bye. Have a great day.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.